So my first movie of 2025 is in the bag. I went to see Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. And I have three things in this movie that I really liked, and my last thing is definitely my favorite. So the first thing I liked about this movie is the atmosphere and the tone of it was completely changed. Instead of it being in a place we're familiar with, it already kind of throws you off balance. You know, you're not in America anymore, you're in Europe, and the laws in Europe are different, the people in Europe are different, security and kind of the rules with society are very different. This movie already kind of throws a little wrench in things where it's not as easy. It's not going to be as easy as it was in the Federal Reserve, but now they're going into the Diamond World. It also gives you a little more intense flavor. The first movie was really good at just cranking up the intensity with law enforcement and the bad guys going at it, lots of firepower. But this was intense in a different way. It approached it more, there's more, will they get caught? The stakes are higher this time, so they have to be smarter. It's a harder place to break into, so they gotta get really creative. As bad as these guys are, you want them to be successful with their job and not get caught, and you're really rooting for Nick this time around because I'm a big fan of Nick's character, and you know, I don't want him to get caught, I don't want him to get shot or die or anything, so I hope, you know, I'm just cheering him on the whole time during this movie that he knows what he's doing because he's taking an extremely huge risk this time around because he's away from everything he knows, and that's another big intensity moment is he's really on his own. Like, there's no one to back him up. He's going rogue. I absolutely loved the dynamics and the chemistry between Nick and Donnie. There wasn't a whole lot of that in the first movie because we were just getting introduced to Donnie. He was not as brave and as much in the spotlight. He gets a ton of screen time, one of the main characters, and then him and Nick always have their little banter back and forth. I've always enjoyed that, but they stepped it up a few levels, lots of funny comedic moments. This movie is actually pretty funny at times, especially between these two. This is how they kind of fight like a old married couple, and you know, and then they have these open, honest conversations, you know, with each other about their lives, about how they ended up getting into their lifestyle, and you know, what their hopes are and what made them into the men that they are today. Nick's character, I think, is a really well written, fleshed out, all-encompassing character. I was just a big fan of him in the first movie. Gerard Butler does a phenomenal job as this kind of character, but I really liked in this movie we get to see a little more vulnerability in his character. As cool of a guy as that he is, a tough guy. Like, I love, like, you know, the machoism of him. He's just that big burly dude, a man's man, if you will. But I always like seeing kind of the crack in his armor when it comes to his relationship with his family, which there isn't really a relationship anymore. He's officially divorced. He only gets to see his girls on their birthdays and Christmas, which is nothing. I mean, he's kind of trying to look for a reset in his life. He's kind of looking for something else moving on in his life. But he's always brought back to the regrets that he has with his family, how, you know, the life he chose really kind of blew up his marriage and his relationship with his kids. The invulnerability of the macho type. You don't think anything can get through to him. You don't think anything can affect him, get him emotional, get him to cry, but there are. I like also, you know, when I talk about his moral compass, you know, he's one of those guys where it feels like the rules don't apply to him, laws don't apply to him, because he's just kind of got his foot in both worlds, and I think he's starting to realize he can't have his foot in both worlds. He's either all in as a law enforcement officer, or he's all in as a criminal, a thief, but he can't have both. And I loved, like, the tug of war he was having in this movie, the fight that he was having in his soul, because you could see it on his face. He didn't have to say anything. You could see on his face that he actually loved the life he was living as a thief, as a bad guy, living it up, getting high, drinking, lots of women, parties, the high adrenaline life, the money, the cars. I mean, the extravagance that you can get when you live as a bad guy, when you live that different kind of lifestyle, and he was a natural at it. I mean, I really thought at a certain point in the movie that he would actually end up switching over for good, but he was still playing the Panthers the whole time, but very convincing. Then my favorite scene in the movie was easily the break-in scene. just how sophisticated it was, more sophisticated than the first movie. The amount of detail and strategy and backup plans that they have to go into a place that is basically impenetrable and they still pull it off. Like, I love seeing the impossible being possible. That's what makes this movie so good. And this, my favorite part of the scene, is doing something that people say is impossible, being a shadow. Such a well executed scene, just an awesome scene. And then the way the movie ended, it looks like we could be getting a trilogy out of this. I'm totally okay with that. I'm usually hit and miss with sequels, especially especially a trilogy. That's kind of gutsy. If they have a lot of success and people want a third movie, I think there's going to be one, because they did a really great job of setting it up for a third movie, and I would see it in a heartbeat. I have some great hopes for if they make a third movie. Biggest one is I actually would want Nick to switch over to the bad side and really dive into that lifestyle, and kind of start over again in a different world. So if you're a fan of heist movies, if you're a fan of Den of Thieves, Gerard, Butler, I'd highly recommend see this movie as soon as you possibly can. So for Den of Thieves 2 Pantera, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 Mudflaps. Remember to leave me a thumbs up and drop in the comments below. What's your favorite heist movie? See you next time.